Ellen Jope. Thank you so much for joining Bloomberg TV. I want to first just have you outline what exactly you're doing. It's a very big undertaking in terms of introducing a tenfold spending increase within ethnic minorities across your supply chains.
Yeah, hi, Annmarie. Nice to see you again. Unilever, for a long time now, has operated with a sustainable business model that looks at multiple stakeholders, the so-called multi-stakeholder model. And two of those stakeholders are the planet and the societies where we do business. And last year, we took a number of very important steps to improve the health of the planet, things like climate action with our net zero commitments, things to regenerate nature, work towards a waste-free world, and so on. And today we're sharing our plans on the other side of that coin, which is to be a positive force in tackling some of the persistent and worsening issues of social inequality. And of course, I guess this has never been more relevant than with the crises that we've seen over the last year, the pandemic, the racial justice and social justice issues. So we've outlined commitments in three areas. The first is that we want to raise living standards across our value chain by ensuring that everyone who directly provides goods or services to Unilever, so beyond our own company, earns at least a living wage or a living income by 2030. And that will ensure that millions, literally, of people around the world will have the standard of living necessary to feed, clothe, house, educate themselves and their families. That's the first one. The second, which you referenced, is creating opportunities through inclusivity. And here what we want to do is we want to spend a minimum of 2 billion euros annually with suppliers that are owned and managed by people from underrepresented groups. So women, people with disabilities, the LGBTQI community, and of course, people of color. And then the third area is preparing our people and our extended value chain for a very different future of work. And in that, we want to pioneer new employment models for our employees, but also work in partnership to equip 10 million young people with the new skills that they will need for the types of jobs that will be around in 2030. So that's what we're up to.
On your first point, how will you ensure that every person on the supply that supplies goods to you will actually be able to get that living wage by 2030? What kind of mechanisms do you need to be in place to make sure that it's actually happening?
Well, it is a scale activity. We have about 70,000 direct suppliers, and we estimate that this will impact somewhere in the 3 to 5 million people area. Now, anyone who contract manufactures for Unilever, we will put it in the contract. So it will be a precondition of doing business that those partners commit to paying their people a fair living wage. And then we will work, as we have done, for example, enforcing human rights through all those direct suppliers. It'll be a combination of encouragement in the beginning, auditing in the middle, and sanctioning towards the end. So by 10 years from now, we just won't do business with people unless we're convinced that they're paying their people a fair living wage, or in the case of self-employed, like many smallholder farmers, that they're able to make a fair living income. So that's the approach that we'll take.
What agencies and NGOs will you work with when you're dealing with increasing the spending with these unrepresented suppliers?
Yeah, I think the way I'd say tackle that is to say the two big problems that the world has to come to grips with are climate change and inequality. And they're such big problems that they can only be tackled through collaboration and cooperation across sectors. So we're going to require other like businesses, our peers, our suppliers, our business partners, but also beyond the private sector, non-government organizations, academia, and governments to participate in this work. And we already have fabulous partners in, you asked specifically about NGOs. We have magnificent partnerships with Oxfam and UNICEF, and frankly, all the big NGOs who help us design and implement these types of programs.
When it comes to the supply chain, what kind of ingredients, whether it's vanilla, cocoa, detergents, do you think will be the biggest contributors when it comes to those that are underrepresented?
Yeah. Well, both the commitments on fair living wage and our 2 billion spend apply across Unilever's entire value chain. So it will literally encompass 100% of our ingredients. But there's one area in particular that we're concerned about, which is the incomes of smallholder farmers, many of whom are in emerging markets. And so whether it's smallholder farmers who grow tea or produce palm oil or cocoa or vanilla or the vegetables that we use, those are the 5 areas that we've called out where we're going to put a specific focus on the fair living income of our agricultural partners.
I want to move on to also ask you about 2021 outlook. Few companies have your scale and scope really in every pocket of the world, and you've dealt with 2020 in the pandemic in so many different markets. I want to get a sense from you, who do you think handled it well, and that these other countries that are still grappling with the virus can learn from?
Yeah, look, we're in a period of still unprecedented volatility. All the old patterns and rules have been turned on their heads. So we're having to adapt and adjust to very different patterns of demand by geography. East Asia, China specifically, is more or less back to business as usual. Other parts of the world are more disrupted. And then we're seeing big differences by channel, of course, e-commerce booming, and by category. And the organizations that have done best are the organizations that have focused on agility and responsiveness rather than locking on a fixed view of what the future is likely to hold. And we see that over and over again. The companies that are putting a premium on fast response are doing better than those that are locking in on one view of the future.
Is there a country specifically that you liked, like what the government mandated, that you think, say, maybe the UK or the United States, is still dealing with a tremendous amount of fatalities, could learn from?
You know, I think this is a quite unprecedented situation, and I don't want to rank government responses, but what we've learned time and time again is that slow generalizations don't work. But what does work is very quick and very surgical action. So right from the beginning, we've advocated for a tier system. We've used it in our own factories and it's worked very well. But you've got to move quickly and you've got to be surgical where the problem. So wherever there's a hotbed of coronavirus, move quickly, take action.
Where are you right now in terms of your employees? What percentage is working from home and what percentage are back?
Yeah, so I would say as a simplification, we've got 150,000 employees and about half of them have continued to go to a formal place of work called a factory all the way through this crisis. And we've put enormous effort on making sure that the working conditions are very hygienic, very safe. And so our real heroes in Unilever have been our frontline factory workers who have continued to work in sometimes quite difficult conditions. You can imagine wearing PPE for a full shift is not an easy thing. And then the other half are our salespeople and office-based workers. And we have a few people back in the office in places like China and Singapore, but more or less everyone around the world is still working from home. And that's an introduction to a new way of working that we anticipate, where we will have hybrid working in the future with people spending, office-based workers spending some time at home and some time in the office in any given week.
You have expensive real estate, though, in London and Blackfriars. You're also building another building in Surrey. Is it necessary? Are you considering potentially scaling back all this square footage you have in office space around the world?
So let's not forget that companies have cultures, and those cultures are built through social capital. And the way you construct social capital is by having people hang out with each other and enjoy each other's company and get to know and build friendships. And so we believe that a formal place of work will be a very important part of maintaining Unilever's culture into the future, places to collaborate, to create, to brainstorm, always, of course, in a very safe way. But there's absolutely no doubt that we will require less square feet, fewer square feet of commercial office real estate in the future than we have in the past. But we're not in a hurry to lock in on one particular model. I think we're all still in the learning phase of what the ideal future new normal way of working in offices is.
Are you thinking of offloading any real estate just yet, or you're going to wait?
Where we have natural leases coming to their end, we are in that situation. For example, you mentioned in the UK where we are building, we'd previously committed to build a fabulous new headquarters for a global and UK headquarters in Kingston. And we're planning to do that, but do it designed for a new world.
So more social distancing within the office?
Well, I think more collaboration space. The idea of hundreds of people sitting in cube farms for an 8-hour day seems very old-fashioned now.
Right. It is Inauguration Day in the United States. There's a new president, or there will be in a moment. I wanted to ask you about what do you make right now as a CEO of a massive multinational company? What do you make of the geopolitical situation happening and this change of hand we do see in the US?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is that as a multinational with 62% of our sales coming from countries outside of Western Europe and North America, we're really used to volatile and uncertain geopolitics. And it's one of our strengths actually is managing through those types of situations. As far as your question about the United States, I mentioned earlier that we have to get to grips with climate change and social inequality. And the new administration, by making that an explicit priority to get back to dealing with climate change and emissions, to addressing some of the social consequences of this crisis, that is something that is very aligned with our agenda. In fact, the announcement that we're making today about making sure that we do our bit to reduce inequality with things like a fair living wage and spending money with minority businesses, just as relevant in the United States as it is in other parts of the world.
All right, Alan, Jope, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.